Hello girls, today I am here with another story titled The Snake and the Mirror, written by Vaikom Muhammad Bashir. Muhammad Bashir was born in Travancore on 21st January 1908. He was an Indian independence activist and writer of Malayalam literature. He was a writer, humanist, freedom fighter, novelist, and short story writer, noted for his path-breaking, down-to-earth style of writing that made him equally popular among literary critics as well as the common man. The government of India awarded him the fourth highest civilian honor of the Padma Shri in 1982. He died on 5th July 1994 at the age of 84 at Baipur, Kerala, India. This story is a story within a story, meaning in this story, a writer tells us a story which he himself heard from a homeopathic doctor. For many of you who are wondering what homeopathy is, it is a medical system based on the belief that the body can cure itself. Those who practice it use tiny amounts of natural substances like plants and minerals. They believe these stimulate the healing process. It was developed in the late 1700s in Germany. Now let us read the story, or rather, I'm going to narrate it to you. So once there were a group of people discussing about snake when suddenly a homeopathic doctor asked them a question. The question was as to whether a full-blooded cobra had ever coiled itself around any part of their body. This question led to utter silence. The doctor then started narrating his encounter with a snake. So here is how it goes. One hot summer night at around 10 o'clock, after having had his meal at a restaurant, he returned home. While opening the door, he heard a familiar sound, and he assumed it to be of rats. Here he uses the word familiar because he has always in the past been disturbed by the sound of rats, since there were many rats living in his room. Since the house was not electrified, he lighted a kerosene lamp and put it on the table. He then explained that he had a small rented room as he was just a practitioner and his earnings were little. He only had around 60 rupees in his suitcase, along with some shirts and dhotis and one black coat. These were the only things that he actually possessed. After taking off his black coat, white shirt and dirty white vest, he hung them up. He then opened the two windows in the room. He says that it was an outer room with one wall facing the open yard. The room had a tiled roof with long supporting gables that rested on the beam over the wall, and there were no ceiling. There was a regular traffic of rats to and fro from the beam. What he means to say here is that rats kept moving around in his room. He lied on his bed and tried to sleep, but it being a very hot night, he could not. So he got up, went out to the veranda to take some fresh air. But it seemed like the wind god had gone to sleep too. Unable to sleep, he decided to read his book, the Materia Medica. As he sat down to read, he saw the large mirror and a small comb that lay beside it, and he felt tempted to look into the mirror. In those days, he was a great admirer of beauty and someone who believed in making himself look handsome. He was unmarried and a doctor, so he felt that he had to make his presence felt. He picked up the comb and ran it through his hair and adjusted the parting so that it looked straight and neat. Again he heard the same sound from above. He took a close look at his face in the mirror and made an important decision. The decision was that he would shave daily and grow a thin moustache to look more handsome. After all, he was a bachelor and that too a doctor. He took another closer look at his face in the mirror and realized that he had an attractive smile. And then another earth-shaking decision came to his mind, and that was to always keep that attractive smile on his face to look more handsome. After all, he was a doctor and a bachelor. Again came that noise from above. And another lovely thought struck him. He would get married. He would get married to a woman doctor who had plenty of money and a good medical practice. But she had to be fat. Fat for a valid reason. If he ever made some silly mistake and needed to run away, she should not be able to run after him and catch him. With such thoughts running in his mind, he resumed his seat on the chair in front of the table. There were no more sounds from above. Then suddenly there came a small thud, as if a rubber tube had fallen in the ground. Surely there was nothing to worry about. Even so, as he thought, he turned around and took a look. No sooner had he done that, a fat snake wriggled over the back of the chair and landed on his shoulder. The snake's landing on him and his turning were simultaneous. With such thoughts running in his mind, he resumed his seat in the chair in front of the table. There were no more sounds from above. Suddenly there came a dull thud as if a rubber tube had fallen to the ground. Surely there was nothing to worry about. Even so, he thought he would turn around and take a look. No sooner had he done that, a fat snake wriggled over the back of the chair and landed on his shoulder. The snake's landing on him and his turning around were simultaneous. He didn't jump, nor tremble, nor cry out. There was no time to do any such thing. The snake slithered along his shoulder and coiled around his left arm above the elbow. The hood was spread out and his head was hardly 3 or 4 inches from his face. He too, like everyone does during the bad phase, felt then the great presence of the creator of this world and this universe. God was there. At his slightest movement, the snake would strike him. Death lurked 4 inches away. Suppose it struck, what was the medicine he had to take? There were no medicines in the room. He was but a poor, foolish and stupid doctor. He forgot his danger and smiled feebly at himself. There was some pain in his left arm. It was as if a thick leaden rod, no, a rod made of molten fire, was slowly but powerfully crushing his arm. The arm was beginning to be drained of all strength. What could it do? It seemed as if God appreciated that because the snake turned its head. It looked into the mirror and saw its own reflection. The doctor did not claim that it was the first snake that had ever looked into the mirror, but he was certain that the snake was looking into the mirror. Was it admiring its own beauty? Was it trying to make an important decision about growing a mustache, or using eyeshadow and mascara, or wearing a vermilion spot on his forehead? The doctor was not certain for anything. Was it a male or a female? He will never know, for the snake had unwound itself from his arm and was slowly slithering into his lap. From there it crept onto the table and moved towards the mirror. Perhaps it wanted to enjoy its reflection at closer quarters. The doctor was no mere image cut in granite. He suddenly, a man of flesh and blood, still holding his breath, got up from the chair, quietly went out through the door into the veranda, and from there leapt into the yard and ran for all he was worth. Everyone listening to his story heaved a sigh of relief, and then somebody asked as to whether his wife was very fat. The doctor answered by stating that God had willed otherwise. His wife was a thin, reedy person with the gift of a sprinter. Then someone else asked him as to whether the snake followed him when he ran. To which he replied, saying that he ran and ran till he reached a friend's house, immediately smeared oil all over himself, took a bath, and changed into fresh clothes. The next morning at about 8:30, he took his friend and one or two others to his room to move his things from there. But he found that he had little things to carry. Some thief had removed all his things. The room had been cleaned out, but not really. The thief had left behind one thing as a final insult. "What was that?" one of the listeners asked, to which the doctor replied saying, "His vest, the dirty one." It seems the thief had a sense of cleanliness. The rascal could have taken it and used it after washing it with soap and water. But he didn't. Then somebody asked him if he saw the snake the next day, to which the doctor laughed and said that he had never seen it since. It was a snake which was taken with its own beauty.